My name is Alex Danilchev, and I'm going to talk today about modern computer classroom from perspective of rapid image provisioning and self-service. So first, let's talk about why. So what are the business objectives? There's definitely a need of cost-effective computer classroom deployment. In-person or remote users, that's definitely is a requirement, especially with ongoing pandemic. When people work remotely, then they work in person, then they might go back to work remote. And then support of physical and virtual machines. This is actually quite essential because not all computers that can be virtualized should be. There are quite a few physical assets out there. So schools, for example, will have hundreds and hundreds of computers in computer classrooms that are sometimes off limits to students that work from home. And then another requirement is a turnkey solution. Quite often we do rely on IT pros to orchestrate, implementation and support of different computer systems. It will be very valuable if that solution can be managed and actually consumed by end users with minimal IT interaction. Now the question is how? What are the technologies used and how can we accomplish those business objectives? We're going to use Citrix Provision Services, PVS for short, along with Citrix Hypervisor, commonly called Zen Server. Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops that will be essential for both orchestration of physical or virtual machines as well as remote access. Quite often you see the name CVAD service because we're going to use Citrix control plane. So this is not a traditional on-prem CVAD. We will take advantage of Citrix service in the cloud. And then we're going to add Citrix micro apps to the mix. And finally, Citrix SDKs. Citrix SDK is actually quite extensive and can glue together different pieces of Citrix infrastructure as well as other hypervisors or products from other vendors. Basic Citrix entitlements actually available behind that barcode. What's interesting is that even if you go with just virtual desktop capabilities that offered as part of Citrix Virtual Desktop Service, provision services, the hypervisor, the desktop, all of those capabilities are included as part of the entitlement. We just need to add micro apps, and Citrix SDKs are complementary. Let's look into high-level architecture. Since we're using Citrix control plane, that's going to be a focal point here with addition of micro apps and virtual desktop entitlement at the minimum, ideally Citrix virtual apps and desktops. We can definitely service virtual machines in multiple clouds. Here we're going to focus on Azure and Google, potentially because Citrix is rolling out PVS support to those areas, and PVS, Citrix Provision Services, are essential for the techniques used here. And of course, we can support on-prem implementations. Again, we're not saying that the entire infrastructure will go on-prem. We're just talking about resource locations. But we can stream to local hypervisors as well as to local physical machines within the on-prem environment through Citrix Provisioning Services while orchestrating those deployments through Citrix control plane. And then this is where Citrix SDKs come in. We construct REST interfaces that will allow us to manipulate those services. And I'm going to demonstrate how to use a mobile phone for remote control, but Mac, Windows, pretty much any web browser can be used as well. So let's look into a few aspects of self-service. So rapid image reassignment, centralized or accessible to individual user. This is going to be the goal of this presentation. Power management and status notification. For example, if we're switching images for, let's say, 10, 20, 100 users, it'll be nice to notify them that those machines will be going down due to the image switch. And then the question here is, can we do it for both in-person users and remote? Again, very essential for the case of pandemic where we do encounter mixes of users. There is a computer classroom that was outfitted for remote use. However, some people come in person and pretty much compete with the remote users for that space. And then let's look into keeping the cost down. Believe it or not, streaming, let's say, computer classroom of 40 computers can easily be accomplished with a mini PC. Here's an example of Intel NUC. There are quite a few varieties of those small computers that can be used. They're very robust. They can be used in pairs for redundancy. Essentially, one machine can easily, on a gig network, pretty much with a local switching infrastructure, can stream the entire classroom without a problem. And now, let's go into the demo. If we take a look at the demo screen, I have a physical iPhone that's projected to the screen with a micro app, Citrix Classroom, right there. I do have Zen Center, pretty much the console that can control Citrix Hypervisor. And as you can see, I have about 20 machines, PC00 through PC19 configured. And those machines can be streamed from provision server, which happen to be PVS00 on the same host. And here's a provisioning console that has 3 collections configured where we can pretty much assign images to those individual virtual machines. Now, the beauty of this solution is that it translates very nicely to physical machines as well, making this solution very cost-effective for physical classrooms. But in any event, so we're going to take a look at these collections, accounting, geometry, and history, that deliver images for different curriculum, from accounting to geometry and history, respectively. So let's get this console out of the way. And what we're going to do right now first, we're going to log in to this accounting machine. And again, this is just a mock-up. There is nothing really special about this image besides the wallpaper. And then let's go to our micro app. What you might notice, and again, let me bring the provisioning console here as well. We do see accounting, geometry, and history with 11 and 9 machines assigned respectively. And what this micro app allows us to do, it allows us, with any knowledge of how provision server works, whether the machine is physical or virtual, how to use Citrix Hypervisor. Without any of that knowledge, we should be able to actually move machines from one image flavor to another. Before we do so, let's take a look at a few options that we have here. Notice I have PC00 running, which is the case, that's the machine in front of us. And also what we can do, let's filter those machines by name. Okay, sorry, PC00. All right, here we go. And what we can do here, let's say if we wanted to switch the image for that machine, we'll have to reboot. Let's notify this user that machine is actually going down. So let's say this, if I could type, machine is going down. Okay, and we're going to send it. So let's take a look, let's remove this console, and here we go. As you can see, we can send this message just to one machine or to a select group of machines based on the filter, or we can send to the entire collection, right? So that's actually pretty easy. Another thing we can do here, we can actually change the power state of this machine. So how about we shut down this machine? Let's click apply. Let's see what happens. Now, while machine is going down, provisioning services are able to deal with physical machines even when they're shut down, right? As long as boot on LAN is supported. So in other words, rebooting machine is really straightforward, and sending the wake-up packet is straightforward as well. In this particular case, this machine is virtual, so there's no wake on LAN capabilities, but it is wired through REST interfaces to Citrix Hypervisor. We actually should be able to start this machine remotely as well. So let's see what happens. And as you can see, yep, we can start this machine. So we're going through network booting process. And our machine is up, so we can actually refresh. By the way, the refresh can be done automatically in the background by micro apps. But in any event, we'll refresh it right now. Let's see if we can pick up the correct power state for this machine. And if we take a look at the options, yep, PC00 is up, and the rest of these machines were down. Okay, so what we'll do right now is that we're going to take this accounting machine and we're going to switch it to, let's say, a different image, let's say history. And we'll still keep the filter, so there's no reason to pretty much run a bunch of machines simultaneously. Let's say we're going to select machine PC00. Yep, that machine is up. And now we're going to click on the button change. And what will happen, let's take a look. As we're going to history, the number of machines in history will change. Yep, it changed from 9 to 10. And accounting was decremented to 10. This machine is up and we have history. Now this is all great, so as you can tell we can switch images, change the power states and messages to users. But how about self-servicing, where a user walks to the computer, they see computer is available, but computer has a wrong image on it? Well, we have an option for that. So let's enable self-service. So here there's a button that says enable self-service. Right now self-service is off. So let's see what happens. And yes, you can see the change here, right? Let's go back to our classroom. We do have history enabled, and if we decide to switch, let's say, to geometry, we actually should be able to do it right directly from that computer screen. So let's do just that. Geometry selected. It says please wait. All the buttons are grayed out. And what will happen, this machine will reboot, and it's rebooting on the request of the user. Not on the request, kind of centralized request that was originally done from the cell phone, or can be done actually from PC, Windows, Mac, Linux, whatnot, right? Through micro app. So here we're actually rebooting this machine directly from the buttons that were on the login screen. And as you can see, we have a geometry in front of us. And then since self-service is enabled, so we see that those buttons are available to users to switch those images themselves. And again, if we do like to switch that option off, we can do it. In fact, that will be switched off for the entire classroom, if we like. But let's actually turn it back on. And as you can probably tell, those buttons are dynamic. We actually are enumerating collections, also collection states. So if collection is disabled, this button will not show up there. But let me show you what we can do here. If we do modify, let's say, collection description, and this is what actually is displayed on those buttons. Let's say history. So instead of history, let's type something else. Hist, for example, right? As you can see, so the button changed automatically. So if we want to put it back the way it was, the load on provision server is actually quite low. So that's actually pretty easy to do. Now, so let's demonstrate how we can actually do things in bulk. So let's see, we have accounting machines and we have history and we have one geometry. So let's switch all our history machines to, let's say, accounting, and let's change it. Notice that those machines are starting up. By the way, if we do move here into our provision services console, so we're moving from history to accounting. So if we refresh accounting, as you can see, machines were moved out here. So number of machines in the history on my mobile device dropped to 0. So as we can see here, the only device I have here is template, right, which is not counted because it's not a machine, right? So that's why we have a count of 0. And if we look into geometry, yes, we do have one machine there. Another one is a template. Again, it's not counted. And we have 19 machines in accounting. PC01 through PC19. So let's get PVS console out of the way. And let's take a look at our machines here. Yeah, we're still booting up. And yes, it's accounting. As you can see, all machines are accounted for. And yes, they are accounting. So just at random, let's go back to options and disable self-service. Now we have 10 machines running. See, the self-service is gone, so I can randomly go to any of these machines. There should be no buttons. And if we need to enable self-service, then here we go. Let's say if we want to change it to history, machine will reboot and will provide the correct image to the user. By the way, this is a perfect setup for classrooms that are used in a mixed mode, when some users are remote and some users are in person. What we do, we actually switch machine to the management state when machine is used in person. So then image switching does not affect remote users. And if users are remote and they do need image switching, so the recommendation is to have one-to-one machine assignment. So in other words, each user has a pre-assigned machine to them. And if that happens, the image reassignment will not lose, their access to that particular machine. So even remote users should be able to use this technique as well. And here we go, it's history. Again, let's not forget about self-service capabilities. We can disable it, or we can enable it. So that's a fairly fluent operation. And by the way, for people that do control classrooms in different time zones, there is a clock built in. So in my particular case, it's 6 o'clock in the evening, my local time, which is Pacific Standard Time. If I'm, let's say, in Hawaii, I can change this clock, or let's say I'm in New York, I will have a different clock here as well. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of E2E.